What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. Today we break down all of the main card fights, including the trilogy fight between Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic. Then we move over to the NBA, where we dissect each first-round matchup and give our predictions for who will move on to the next round. Finally, NFL training camp is in full swing, and we discuss some quick-hitting topics from around the league. All that and much more coming your way right now. Nick, how's it going? How are you doing? How is vacation?
Well, now that I actually get to see you in person, vacation has gone down a little bit. No, just kidding. It's great to see you. Not like I don't see you every so often, but it's nice to take some time off of work and relax. And I still get to watch some sports.
Yeah, so. For sure. Obviously, for those of you who watch on YouTube, you're kind of seeing something a little different. We are on vacation this week. We don't have any video. We're just kind of relaxing and hanging out. We'll get everything back to normal as it stands next week, but right now we're just going to do a podcast and without the video. So,
and for all of you watching on YouTube, you're going to see a little different setup for us next week too. So look forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. Nick's been working on a lot of graphical features for you guys, and I think you guys are really going to like it. So, all right. So let's just jump right in. Obviously, this is, your favorite topic in UFC. UFC 252 just took place. It was a stacked card. I mean, just the main card. Dana White, before we jump in, Dana White has done such an incredible job. And I say this all the time, but I truly mean it. Dana White has done absolutely everything he can to bring so many eyeballs to the UFC.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think the reason is he knows these fighters so well. Like, even if you don't know who they are, he's going to make you know who they are.
Right.
He knows this talent so well, and that's why, you've got 600 fighters on the roster, and he's got to put together these fights. And it's not just him, but, everybody in the UFC knows exactly what to do, and they're all fans first. And that's the biggest part. And I think that's why they succeed so well is they know what the fans want to see because they know what they want to see. And it works out perfectly that way. And, even if you don't know who the fighters are going to a fight, you're going to come out a fan of either one or both of them because the fight's going to be absolutely amazing. And we saw that with the first two fights on the card. A lot of unknown fighters, and they put on absolute performances. And one, I know we're not going to really talk about it, but Dan Pineda, who took on Herbert Burns, came on 3.5 pounds overweight, which is unacceptable.
With a full camp.
With the full camp, yeah. Herbert Burns had a full camp. Dan Pineda took this on a 2 weeks' notice and was 26 pounds overweight once he took this fight. Had to cut all 26 pounds and made weight on time, and absolutely destroyed Herbert Burns, and then took him down in that crucifix position and just started elbowing his face to an oblivion. You know what? I don't have anything against Herbert Burns, but I was so happy that Dan Pineda did that to him because, you know what? If you're not going to take this seriously, then you don't belong in the UFC. I don't care if your brother is Gilbert Burns and you're an amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu martial artist. If you don't have the drive, then you don't belong here. And that was also 6 years. It's been 6 years since Dan Pineda's fought in the UFC as well. 2014 was his last fight. So him coming back and putting on a performance like that shows a lot, and I'm excited to watch him again.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I was very happy to see Dan Pineda come out on top, and, he even mentioned how he is, how upset he was that, Herbert Burns wasn't taking it seriously, and he really wanted to stick it to him in the octagon and show him, listen, if you're not here for, to make a name for yourself, if you're not here to compete, then get the hell out. So I think he gave him the business, and I think Herbert Burns won't be making that mistake again. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, and that fight almost got stopped a little bit early because if you saw Dan Pineda's eye afterward, he got caught with, I think it was an elbow early in the fight, and it started to swell up over time, and he got the TKO right in time because right afterward you saw that eye, it was completely shut. The doctors would have stopped it. They would have had to, just for precautionary reasons, but you know what? I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
For sure. All right, so let's get to the first major fight that happened on the main card, and that was Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Junior Dos Santos. Nick, what were your thoughts on this first fight?
Yeah, I mean, I had Junior Dos Santos winning this fight because I thought he was going to utilize the smaller cage to his advantage. A guy who's a beast when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Rozenstruik, who's a pure striker. He doesn't know what to do on the ground. Compared to Junior Dos Santos. And I thought this was going to be a completely lopsided fight for the most part because you don't want to stand up and strike with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That's just not a guy you want to test the waters with. And I think Junior Dos Santos, he's always tried to go after the critics who say he's not good on his feet. He can't strike. He's just a one-hit wonder when it comes to that. And he paid the price because he tried to do too much on his feet. He should have taken him down to the ground. At some point, I don't think there were any takedowns for Junior Dos Santos, which is just bad game planning. And I think that's where everything went wrong for him. Rozenstruik took advantage of it in the second round with that TKO, just threw a nasty combination at him and got him down. It was just one right-hander after the other. And, Junior Dos Santos, got the full force of Rozenstruik.
Yeah, I mean, it's right in his last name, right? Rozenstruik.
Oh, yeah.
He's not somebody you want to go in hand-to-hand combat with. And I think Junior Dos Santos and his team, they came in with a plan. They were going to beat him at his own game, and I don't think they were truly prepared for what he had in store as far as power. And we even saw that Rozenstruik was trying to take JDS to the ground at certain points. He was shooting the legs and trying to get him down. So it was like a complete reversal. And you're going to hear, as we break down some of these fights, that we're kind of surprised with how a lot of these fights turned out because we thought that the smaller octagon was going to be more of a ground type of fight, and
yeah, it should have played much more of a factor than it did.
It didn't, and we're going to continuously bring it up. But if you look into the statistics and what that's supposed to mean, it's supposed to favor grappling so much more.
Yeah, and we didn't really watch the preliminary fights, but based on the results, a lot of the early fighters took advantage of the smaller ring, and they got a lot of submission victories. Whereas the entire main card, there were no submission victories; it was all TKOs, so or decisions.
Right?
So very surprising in that aspect.
Yeah, Junior Dos Santos, he's a great fighter in his own right. I think he just had a poor game plan heading into this, and I mean, this was a bounce back fight for Jairzinho Rozenstruik because he got his ass beat by Francis Ngannou.
It's like 11-second knockout.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of put onto he was coming in full fury, and then he got set back a little bit, and got his game checked, and now all of a sudden he's kind of back into it, and he's getting back into the groove. You're going to see him start to really try to figure out what went wrong in that Ngannou fight. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him go after either Ngannou. We're looking at who's the number.
So Dana's pretty much already confirmed that Ngannou is next in line for a heavyweight title fight, and that leaves Rozenstruik kind of out there. I don't know exactly who. I think Derek Lewis would be the best fit for him.
Yeah.
The Black Beast, who just came off a major victory the week prior. So I think that would be a great fight. And we'll get in some news later, but I think right now Rozenstruik versus Derek Lewis would be an amazing matchup that I think that they would probably be put close to the number one contender spot for the heavyweight title.
Yeah, I think Rozenstruik versus Derek Lewis would be a really good matchup. I think if Rozenstruik can capitalize on Derek Lewis, which is going to be a very tough fight for him, but if he is able to do something like that, I think that he's going to be in line to challenge somebody like Francis Ngannou and possibly whoever might be the next heavyweight champion, who we'll get to in a little bit. But as we move forward, there was so much else that went on at UFC 252. The co-main event, your boy, right? The guy that you have been about for such a long time, Sugar Shawn O'Malley versus Marlon Cheetah Vera. This was such a disappointing fight. And not for any stretch, but it was just a disappointing fight.
Yeah, this was absolutely heartbreaking for me. It completely ruined my night. It ruined everything. I'm still salty about this, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Things happen, and that's the way that MMA goes in general. There's anything can happen at any point, and it's going to turn the tides. And I get my friends asking me, who should I bet on? Who's going to come out on top? And I'm like, I don't know. Anything can happen. You don't know anything can happen. And we look at this fight, O'Malley. It's very controversial whether it was a check from Cheetah, whether that caught his foot, or if it's just a recurring injury. But the fact of the matter is, Sean O'Malley has had this injury twice before, where the peroneal nerve in his foot just, I don't know if it gives out and he just loses feeling in his foot, and it looked like he twisted his ankle. He didn't break any bones, that's what the x-rays showed, but he did go for an MRI yesterday, and we're waiting the result of that. He will be back on his podcast, The Timbo Sugar Show, tomorrow, so hopefully we'll get more information then about that. But he was clearly in some crazy pain that he didn't want to be there anymore. He couldn't take it, and so it looked like he just was looking for a way out. He took a shot from Cheetah Vera that got him down, and you saw him on his back, and he was just like, "Come and get me, let's finish this." And I think that's what Herb Dean saw too, because he stopped. That was a very early stoppage from Herb Dean, a guy who's been criticized a lot recently for bad stoppages. And I think, although he was criticizing this one as well, it was a good stoppage because we all knew that Shawn wanted out of the octagon, and there was something seriously wrong. And we saw that he was stretchered out afterward. It only took 2 elbow shots, by the way, to get him out of there, which wasn't a lot. He was putting up some little defense and intelligently defending himself based on the rules, but Herb Dean knew that the fight needed to be over because there's something seriously wrong. You know what? I still don't think that Marlon Vera really proved anything this fight. If you saw those leg kicks that Shawn was throwing at him, absolutely just tossing him with his legs. And Marlon may have landed like 1 or 2 strikes before that. I don't think that he really showed anything, especially as a guy who's a veteran in the UFC. That was his 14th or 15th fight. I don't know where Marlon Vera goes from this. He's still unranked. I don't think he did enough to prove that he should be a ranked fighter. But we'll have to see what Dana thinks, what the matchmakers think. Rankings, to be honest, really don't mean anything anyway. But this is kind of just it's a kind of a hurdle for Sean O'Malley to get over, and it stops his hype train, and it puts a little bit more light on Marlon Vera, puts a lot more the spotlight on him a little bit. So we'll have to see what they think of this, but to me, I stand by what I think. Marlon Vera proved absolutely nothing, and I loathe the guy for the way he acted after the fight. You need to act with respect. You can't go out there after somebody is seriously injured and mock him and just taunt him like that. That's just uncalled for. That's not how MMA is run. Everybody walks around with respect for one another, and that's just not how you conduct business in the UFC and MMA altogether.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak too much on the fight. I think you did a pretty good job of that, but it was upsetting to watch. Sugar Shawn. He you can't really plan for that. There's really not much else to say. He's had the injury before. He can't do much about it, and it's just one of those things where it's just unfortunate. And I'm going to speak more towards the fact that Marlon Vera really needs to figure out what type of person he's going to be, because as of right now, he has set a target on his back for the way he acted after the fight. He was mocking Sugar Shawn. He was just an overall douche about the entire situation. Didn't ever go to check on him and see if he was okay. I mean, when you're fighting, you're physically fighting another human. The least you can do once it's all said and done, if he's injured, you see him getting stretchered off. you want to make sure that they're okay, because at the end of the day, you're all competing for the same thing, and it's afterward, and I just don't understand where he gets off. So now other people that ranked people in that same division are going to take note, and they're going to start coming after him. There's going to be a target on his back because people they take exception to somebody who's unranked acting like a fool.
Yeah, and this is a bantamweight division that is increasingly becoming better, and I think there's so many people ahead of him, and if he wants to make his way into the top 15 or top 10, he's got a long road ahead of him, and based on his age, he's kind of running out of time. So we'll see what the matchmakers say, and I look forward to Marlon Vera's next fight. I hope he gets his face kicked in all due respect. And, we'll see what happens after that.
It's funny how you can say with all due respect, but, it's one of those.
Hey,
but I understand the sentiment. I do. All right, so that was the co-main event, and then this whole card was based around, this final fight, the trilogy fight. DC, Daniel Cormier, versus Stipe Miocic. This was a trilogy that was a long time coming. It didn't make it to the card until later on. It was announced not too long ago, and but they both had full camps and they were ready to go. They wanted this fight, and Daniel Cormier basically said that this was his last fight going in. So there was a lot riding on this. Not only a trilogy fight, not only a championship belt on the line, but Daniel Cormier, who is an absolute UFC legend. This was going to be his final fight for the UFC. So, Nick, why don't you break down what you saw and let us know?
Yeah, so the fight definitely started out hot for Stipe. He took advantage. He took it to Daniel Cormier, and Cormier just seemed off balance the entire fight. And you saw that right out of the get-go, and Stipe clearly took the first 2 rounds. I did see some people think DC won the first round, but I don't agree with that.
I didn't either.
And then we saw them in the third round. They both took the round off. They both laid up against the cage. Didn't really throw any punches probably until 3 minutes in, and then I think DC did get the edge, but because Stipe was controlling the ring most of the time, technically, then I think that in the eyes of the judges gives him the victory in that round.
In the third round?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think in the last 2 rounds, I would give the slight edge to Daniel Cormier. I think he did enough. Definitely in the 4th round, he won that clearly.
Yep.
And then in the 5th round, it was definitely a lot of people thought it came down to that round, but and it was still really close. And I know you say this a lot, Mike, where if you want to beat the champ, you can't just tie him. You have to actually beat him and all. And so he clearly didn't do enough to beat Stipe in that round. It was more of a tie. And so even if you had it going 2-2 in the 5th round, DC definitely didn't do enough to secure the victory in the eyes of the judges. And you know what? I agree with the decision. I think Stipe did enough to retain the title. And unfortunately, DC doesn't get the fairy tale ending that he was looking for. But you know what? This is real life. This is how things go. It's not the movies.
Right.
And I know DC is one who gets very upset. He's very emotional after his losses. And I think this was the loss he's taken the best so far. Even though he was extremely upset that he lost, I think he kind of knew that he lost this fight. And I think he just knew that this was it for him. He couldn't. He's just not in the same shape he was. I mean, he's 41, almost 42 years old, and you got to think that it's amazing that he was even there to begin with. That he's still fighting, and hats off to him for an absolutely amazing career. He'll go down as one of the best heavyweights and light heavyweights of all time, and I think Stipe is going to continue on as the GOAT. I mean, this really was the GOAT heavyweight matchup, and Stipe proved that he's the better of the two, and he's got a long road ahead of him.
Yeah, I think I want to say I was upset by this fight. It didn't live up to the hype. It didn't.
No, definitely didn't.
It didn't deliver. And that's no part of the UFC's fault. That's no part of Dana White's fault. I wouldn't even say it's on Stipe and DC. I just, I think there was too much hype. It's like when you go see a movie, right? You go see a movie everybody's been talking about, they've been hyping it up, and it's an okay movie. You probably think it's a bad movie at that point because it didn't live up to expectations. I think that's where I am with this fight. I think I just saw two old men trying to just grapple with each other, trying to stay alive in the ring, in the octagon rather, and it didn't do it for me. So I had the score. I wasn't sure. I was flip-flopping between 49-46 and 48-47, but both decisions were going to go Stipe's way, and it seemed when I heard the unanimous decision pulled out, two judges had it 48-47 and one had it 49-46. So I was right there with the scoring with them. It's just one of those things, and you touched on it before, but if you want to become the champion, you have to show the judges that you have not only tied but exceeded what that champion has done, and that because the scoring, as much as it shouldn't be, is scored a little different in a championship fight. They need to make sure that you are going to be a worthy champion, not that you squeaked by and got a championship. That's not how they're going to score this. So when it comes to something like this, it was cool to see it. I'm sure it's going to be part of the storied past of the UFC, that the DC Stipe trilogy fight that took place. It was great to watch some of the old highlights and kind of how we got to this point. But at the end of the day, it looked like Daniel Cormier just wasn't in shape to fight. He just looked like he was done, and they were both very flat-footed by the third round, and this is a 5-round championship fight.
Well, and that's what they said. Daniel Cormier likes to take the third round off in these championship fights just to recover, and we clearly saw that from both sides.
Yeah, but once he took the third round off, he came out strong in the fourth. I think that was the definite one that I gave him.
But I think that's why he's been so successful, is he strategizes so well. His MMA IQ is just so high. And he realizes that 25 minutes of fighting somebody is astronomical. And in order to be successful at it, you need to be able to win in the championship rounds. And to do that, you need to take some time off in the third round. Yeah. And he's been very successful at that throughout his career. And he continued to do that in his last fight. And it worked out in his favor in that aspect. But he just didn't do enough early on to get the victory.
Well, and he just doesn't have the same tank that he used to, because even though he took the third round off, right, he then won the fourth round. He still didn't have enough after taking the third round for the fifth round. He just it was close. It was closer than the first two rounds were, but it wasn't there in my eyes. I saw him struggling to get to the finish line. And you know what? Again, he's almost 42 years old. I expect that from somebody.
Well, one thing I didn't expect was them to be on their feet the entire time. Right. That was an extremely surprising aspect to this fight, where we heard in the corner that his coaches kept saying, "Take him to the ground, take him to the ground. There's open opportunities." And DC was like, "Yeah, I saw one or two opportunities where I could have taken him to the ground," and we didn't even see attempts from Daniel Cormier, which was extremely surprising, because Stipe, for the most part, is a striker. He doesn't know how to do much on the ground compared to Daniel Cormier. And Cormier, being the supreme athlete he is as a wrestler, should have dominated on the ground. And he probably, if he had taken him to the ground early, probably would have secured one of those rounds, which would have put him over. He should have game planned better for the ring. I think the ring should have played more of a factor than it did, and I think that's where he failed. I think he just got startled a little bit in the beginning when Stipe just bull rushed him, and he got thrown off balance. And the entire time you see DC circling around the ring, couldn't regain his balance, and we saw that in the first few rounds. He couldn't find his footing, but that's hats off to Stipe for disrupting the game plan of Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, and one thing that comes to mind when you say he should have tried to go to the ground. I mean, it takes a lot more energy to try to go to the ground. Sorry, go to the ground. So I don't know if he would have had that in him to finish the fight if he started to do that early on.
It's possible.
That tank was already headed toward empty very quickly toward the end. If he had to shoot the legs, 2 or 3 more times, and even if he got him to the ground but wasn't able to really do much and capitalize, he might have won a round. But at the same time, what would that have done toward the end of the fight? So a lot of things might have changed at that point in time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for DC, but Stipe, I think he just proved that he is the better heavyweight. I think if you were to take into account what Daniel Cormier has done throughout his career as a light heavyweight and then moving up to heavyweight, he definitely deserves to be in the top echelon of all-time fighters in the UFC.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think the story of Daniel Cormier is even finished being told. I think he has a lot more to give to the UFC, whether it's in commentating, whether it's in coaching, whether it's in both.
He's going to go back to coaching high school. I'm sure he'll be back at some UFC events with Joe Rogan and John Anik commentating some of those fights. So he's definitely going to be around the sport a lot. He's an ambassador for the sport. He's been huge for endorsing and promoting the sport, and I think that he's going to continue on that path. And I think that's where his place right now is in the UFC.
Yeah, for sure. I would also be surprised that Dana White doesn't try to utilize him more inside of the UFC, inside of the back end of the UFC, try to become more of a face or a figurehead for the UFC, because Dana White's doing everything right now. I mean, he needs to split that load.
Yeah, I would love for them if they end up bring the Ultimate Fighter back. Make Stipe and DC coaches.
They are bringing the Ultimate Fighter back.
Yeah, I just don't know the logistics about it with COVID going on. I know they were planning for this month, but nothing's obviously happening.
Right.
It's just the Dana White Contender Series going on. So when the Ultimate Fighter does come back, I don't know if they have coaches all set, but they should end up having Stipe and DC at one point. That would be so much fun. Yeah. Or if they want to, the even bigger rivalry between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones.
Well, speaking of Jon Jones, right? News came out yesterday that Jon Jones has relinquished his light heavyweight title, and it's believed that he did this in an effort to start training and competing at the heavyweight class. So he will try to figure out, where his place is. Him and Dana are going to have to figure that out. But right now it looks like Ngannou Stipe is going to be the next championship fight. And then from there, it could possibly become either Stipe and Jon Jones or Ngannou and Jon Jones. And I would love to see a Francis Ngannou, Jon Jones heavyweight title fight.
Yeah, and I think that's one part I was alluding to before that I didn't want to get ahead of myself with. I want to see Derek Lewis and Jairzinho Rozenstruik fight. But I want to see the winner of that fight face Jon Jones, and the winner of that fight go face off for the heavyweight title. I think that would be great. I think that Jon Jones needs to have one non-title fight, whether it's 3 rounds or 5 rounds, in the heavyweight division before he fights for the title. He needs to prove that he can handle the heavier guys, handle that punching power. And I think Jon Jones will easily handle them for the sole fact that he's he is the leaner guy. He has the longest arms in the UFC, and I think he's going to be one of the only heavyweights to actually utilize the ground. I think that a guy like that with his wrestling background, with how good he is, he's going to take people to the ground and make them pay, and that's something that a lot of heavyweights really don't know how to handle. And they're not going to be able to learn that in the next 1 to 2 years enough to handle themselves against Jon Jones. So I think Jon Jones has a clear path to the heavyweight title and is going to give Stipe or Francis an extremely huge run for their money. And that's why I said before, Stipe has a long road ahead of him because he's got to go through Francis Ngannou again. It ended in a unanimous decision last time for Stipe. But this is a whole different Francis Ngannou. This is a guy who's continually developing and improving in his game. And I don't think Stipe has faced this Francis Ngannou before. And so he's got to face this guy. Plus, he's got to face John Jones if he wins. You're talking about some extremely tough opponents that is going to be very hard for even the best of all time to go and beat. So, long road ahead of Stipe if he wants to continue to be the champ. The heavyweight class just got even better with John Jones entering.
Yeah, for sure. I think John Jones is just, he's going to create, I don't want to say controversy, but he's going to create a whole hell of a lot more of interest. And just, he's going to be somebody, you're taking some TNT and you're adding another bunch of sticks of dynamite to it. There's a lot in this heavyweight division that can happen. A lot of big names, a lot of heavy striking fighters, and also a lot of unknown. I mean, there's a lot of fighters and a lot of things that can happen between now and then. But it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out for sure.
Yeah, it will.
All right, so I think we're going to end it there for the UFC. Everything. As far as UFC is concerned, we're going to continue to discuss as things happen, and we'll keep you updated on our Twitter about things that are happening with Dana White and John Jones and all the different cards that pop up. UFC events happen every week, every Saturday, so make sure to keep an eye out on that. Nick does a great job of live tweeting those events, so if you're interested at all, if you can't watch it, feel free to check on our Twitter. Those events are really fun and interesting though.
I mean, I saw a few people getting a little heated with me about defending Shawn O'Malley and going after Cheetah Vera.
One guy was going after us, but you know what? That's what we're here for. We wanna incite some trash talk. We want to incite some differing opinions, and we want to debate with you guys.
Yeah, so everybody's got their opinions. So everybody's entitled to their opinions, but let's duke it out. Let's see who's the better. I know I am.
All right. So speaking of duking it out, the NBA playoffs are now in full swing. We have just begun the first round. The play-ins happened. So, we have 1 through 8 set for each side. The play-ins were pretty simple. I don't think we really need to discuss too much of those. But I want to go over what we've seen so far from the first round and our predictions for what's going to happen overall. So the first one I want to go through, and I think this will be quick, but the Celtics versus the Sixers. What did you see, and what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I saw a very slow start coming from the Celtics. I think that if they want to beat the Sixers, which they should have absolutely no problem doing, and that's just coming as an NBA fan, not even as a Celtics fan, I think that they have the upper hand, especially without Ben Simmons there. You're facing like Joel Embiid and a bunch of average players. So I think that they shouldn't have an issue. Tatum had a great score, had a great performance last night, and so did Jaylen Brown, especially in the fourth quarter, who had 15 points there. We need to see more of that throughout the game. You can't just rely on the back end of the game to get all your scoring in, because that's when things go bad for you. And we saw that in the third quarter when it was a 20-5 run for the Sixers, and they came back and took the lead. You can't let that happen. That I know this is the first game; they're just getting warmed up and getting into it. But I think that the Celtics, if they want to continue to have success against the Sixers, they need to push the pace a little bit. I don't think the Sixers really have anybody that can keep up in transition with the Celtics. So I think they need to work on that more. And I think the size factor. I know the Sixers keep feeding Joel Embiid a lot. So. That's hard for the Celtics to stop because they don't have that size. But I think if they start putting more people on him, just double team him, I don't think he can handle that. I think he doesn't have great ball control. I think you can get that ball out and throw the ball back court for transition play. So work on that. I think Brad Stevens, I was very upset with last night. His management of the game was very poor. I think he needs to be more on top of his players, get them more into it, and they'll be more successful. But very upset with how the Celtics played last night. I don't expect much from the Sixers. They've won about like 1 or 2 games so far in the bubble, and without Ben Simmons, they're not going to do much else. So that. Other than that,
looks like an early exit for Philly.
Yeah, I could see Philly taking one of these games, so probably going 4 games in the series, but I don't see the Sixers winning more than 1.
Yeah, so, I mean, I agree with a lot of the sentiment that you had there. I think one of the issues is that the Celtics starters and I don't even think Marcus Smart played in the final bubble game. They all took a rest, so they haven't had actual game play for almost a week. So they definitely came out slow. I was upset that they weren't really pushing the pace. They were allowing a lot of the Sixers to get set in the half court on defense, and they weren't driving to the basket. They weren't pushing the pace, and even when they were driving to the basket, I saw 4 in the first quarter alone. 4 missed layups, 2 from Gordon Hayward, 1 from Jaylen Brown, and 1 from Daniel Tice. We can't have that. As a Celtic, you cannot miss wide open layups. And, one of the other things I noticed is that the lack of size is really hurting them on the rebounding. I saw a couple different instances throughout the game where the size of the 76ers, whether it was Al Horford and Joel Embiid or Tobias Harris, whoever, they were imposing their will down low. They were forcing the Celtics under the basket, and they were getting offensive rebounds and keeping plays alive. That is something that the Celtics have to limit. They have to limit offensive rebounds, and they have to push the pace. I think if they can do that, they can either sweep or win, 3 in 4. I don't see this going to a Game 5. Obviously, it's a best-of-5 series for the first round. But right now, it looks like the Sixers are struggling. Al Horford is just, he can't keep up. Joel Embiid can't do everything for the Sixers. He can have, a 30-point game, 20 rebound, and 10 assists, triple-double. And he's, that's still not going to be close enough. Josh Richardson is a good scorer for them, and Tobias Harris, but outside of that, they don't have much in terms of bench depth or their ability to spread the floor and score from the perimeter. So the Celtics can easily grab them from the inside and condense the defense and make things very difficult near the basket. Before that game, though, there was the Raptors and Nets. That was a pretty simple game, I would say.
Yeah, when it comes to the series, it's very straightforward. The Nets, I think they're lucky to be in it. I'm surprised that they're in it, but it would have been hard for them to be knocked out coming into the bubble. But the Nets, they have a couple players that look like they have a bright future. Other than that, the Raptors, they're still extremely dominant. They really haven't lost their step, and they should have, just like the Celtics, should have a very easy time moving on. In fact, I see the Raptors having an easier time, and I think the Raptors are just going to just win 3 and move on.
Yeah, I think the Raptors, between Lowry and Siakam and some of the other guys that they have on there, they're coming off a championship. Don't forget, this is still the same season that they're defending their title,
and they're out to prove that they can do it without Kawhi.
Right, and so obviously they're without Kawhi Leonard, but they have the main parts of the team still in place, and they are the second seed for a reason. They were able to win a lot of games, and I think that Toronto is going to be a force to be reckoned with. The Nets are obviously without their top 3 players in Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan. But Karis LeVert has been such an amazing player for them, and he's going to be such an incredible piece for them moving forward. I think this is the time to get the young guys to get playoff experience, kind of what the Celtics did about 3 years ago. You get the young guys experience, you get them the ability to feel what it's like in the playoffs. Obviously, it's a little different because you're not heading into hostile environment with a crowd and everything like that. But the Nets, this isn't their year. This isn't their time. We knew that going into the season. Kevin Durant was out. Kyrie Irving was hobbled with injury throughout. DeAndre Jordan decided not to come into the bubble. They're not here to make too much of a stink, but I think the Raptors will handle this one easily. The most, I would say, for me, the most interesting game of the entire evening was the Clippers versus the Mavericks. This game came down to the wire. There were a lot of issues, if you will, and there were a lot of different, there were a lot of different scoring methods. There were a lot of different things that happened. The first one was obviously the ejection of Kristaps Porzingis. He got a technical early on in the game. I didn't see exactly what happened there, but he received a second technical that offset with Marcus Morris because there was a little scuffle. And as Steve Javie from ESPN put it, he acted as an aggressor and not a peacemaker, which is why he was hit with a technical foul, even though he was the one who was protecting Luka Doncic, obviously the star player of the team. And that was his second technical, and he was tossed out of the game for that. I think that these referees need to realize exactly what they're doing, because you possibly cost them the game with how close it was toward the end. Kristaps Porzingis could have made all the difference, especially for defensive stops and his ability to space the floor as a big man. He could have caused a lot more problems for the Clippers than they were able to with Maxi Kleber.
Yeah, I think not only did they cost them the game, I think they cost them the series. I think that the Mavericks, if they had won that game, were going to do some serious mental damage to the Clippers. I think they would have gotten their heads. I think they would have, got in their own heads and pumped themselves up, and that could have definitely helped them. But I think they feel very defeated because the league is against them, the refs are against them, and you've got to go up against two future Hall of Famers in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and you still got Pat Beverly and Lou Williams and all these guys on the Clippers who can go off at any moment of any game. And for them to make the Clippers look silly last night, poor defense, weren't making a lot of buckets. I think that the Mavericks had a huge opportunity that the NBA kind of ruined for them. I still would love to see the Mavericks push the tempo and keep up the pace with them, but I think that it's going to be hard for them to beat the Clippers, who just are so deep with talent. It's going to be extremely tough. It was extremely tough for them coming in, but to see Luka put on the performance he did, become the youngest player with a 40-point performance in the playoffs, or with the biggest performance for anybody with their first postseason game, for him to do that without Kristaps, almost win the game. They have an extremely bright future. I don't even know if they're one piece away. They might just be there. It just might not be their time.
I think they're about one full piece away. I think that right now the Mavericks are struggling because you saw without Kristaps Porzingis, right, who is oftenly injured, you have Luka Doncic, who's an absolute phenomenon in this league. You need somebody, if they're going to, take this series, right? Kawhi Leonard, one of the best defensive players in the league, and Paul George, who's an all-defensive player. If they throw either one of them at him or both, or double him up with somebody, it's going to be tough. And I think the Mavericks are about one piece away from being able to truly contend. And obviously the West is so deep. You have Denver, you have Utah, the Lakers, the Clippers. These teams are so deep and so talented that there's a lot to get through. I didn't even get to Houston or Oklahoma City at that point,
Yeah, I mean, even though they had Boban Marjanovic, who stepped in for Kristaps Porzingis after he was ejected, that's a huge drop-off. In the 20 minutes that Kristaps was in the game, he put up 14 points, which is it's amazing. And if you put him in the game for another 15 minutes or so, he would probably had another 10 or 12 points. And this is a guy who can shoot from anywhere on the floor. So with that versatility, I don't think it's very hard for the Clippers to stop that. They don't have a real big guy who can match up well with Kristaps Porzingis, and that's a huge X factor for the Mavericks.
I mean, it's tough to have somebody match up with a 7'1", 7'2" Latvian who can shoot threes at the pace of a normal shooting guard.
Right.
So it's tough, and not for anything, but the referees did really mess this up because you had LeBron James tweeted out, Dirk Nowitzki, obviously, who's a little biased about this, tweeted out, and then Patrick Mahomes, the MVP, former MVP of the NFL, Super Bowl champion, he understands exactly what's going on, and he was like, this is BS, man. That was one of the softest technicals I have ever seen. If you watched it, I've seen scrums that have actually had, like, some actual shoves and people, getting really heated that ended in absolutely nothing. They have, it was just a play on, but, it just happened to be that this one ref, he doesn't like any confrontation, I guess. Must bring back some old childhood memories for him.
And usually the refs allow you to be more physical in the playoffs. They know that you're fighting for a title, and they're gonna allow you to go the extra step over the boundaries a little bit, but clearly not in this case. And I think that's where officiating in the NBA is a little faulty. I don't want to get into it too much, but it seems like some of these refs are very partial to some teams. And it clearly showed last night.
Twitter blew up last night saying that, the NBA is behind all of this. They wanted to secure the idea that the Lakers and Clippers can meet in the Western Conference Final. I'm not sure if I'm willing to go Alex Jones level conspiracy theory about that, but, it is worth watching because the fact remains is that Marcus Morris, what he did to Luka Doncic on the way up, it was a hard foul. It wasn't anything egregious, but then he didn't let go, and he was just being a nuisance, right? And it started a little scuffle, and it was fine. Nobody threw punches. They got face to face, and it should have just been broken up. Everybody should have been sent to their bench, and that should have been the end of it. But some referee just didn't like confrontation, and he decided to tee up Marcus Morris and tee up Kristaps Porzingis because, again, Steve Javie, the way he put it, is that he didn't help solve the issue. He was more of an aggressor, and he wanted to get in the face, which makes him a great teammate in my eyes. He's protecting their star player. He's protecting his best friend. And that's something that needs to be commended. That shouldn't be something that should get you tossed out of a playoff basketball game.
Yeah. One game, the last game that happened yesterday that I think was my favorite game. I didn't really get to see too much. As we mentioned, we are on vacation, so it's hard to see everything. But the Jazz Nuggets, this game, the only game to go to overtime, absolutely amazing. You had Donovan Mitchell put up 57 points. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for the Jazz. Rudy Gobert had a mediocre game that if he had stepped up more, probably would have done more to get the victory. But the Nuggets came in on the top. They proved that they're the better team. And in my opinion, I think the Nuggets are the best team in the Western Conference. I think they have the best shot at winning the title for the West.
Yeah, I think Denver and Utah are some of the strongest teams that I've seen without major star power. Right? You don't have the Kawhi Leonards, the Paul Georges, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Those guys are in LA, right? You take those two out of it, I think Denver and Utah are the clear-cut 1 and 2 in the West because they don't have that one guy. They are built with major star power throughout their team. So you take Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. That's a great starting lineup.
Don't forget Mike Conley's not there because he did have the birth of his child.
That's right.
So he has left the bubble for I think 3 games. So he will be back later this series if it's still going on. Otherwise, if the Nuggets are still in it, he'll be back for the second part of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And then as far as Denver is concerned, I think, one of the matchups to really watch is Nikola Jokic and Rudy Gobert, the two big men in a league where it's all about fast-paced shooting threes, getting to the rim quickly, and, getting back on defense. I'm excited to watch the two big men go at it. I think these two tower humans are just going to bludgeon each other underneath the basket, and it's going to be something like really fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think something that would be fun to look forward to is if Ball gets some time in there.
Yeah.
I know he got a couple minutes during the regular season games in the bubble. That was pretty much his only time this season playing in any games since he's come back from injury. But I think he could be a real X factor because you put him with Jokic, you see the damage that those two can do together. We saw it in practice film, and I think that they could really combine for something special. And there's clearly nobody else in the NBA, at least in the playoffs right now, that can match up against Nikola Jokic and Ball.
Yeah, I think that that they have a lot of power out in Denver, and they can do a lot of different things. But the fact remains that they, even if they get through each other, right, one of them's going to have to move on at some point, right? They're going to have to prove it to the rest of the world and show that they can beat the likes of the Lakers or the Clippers or whoever that they get matched up with at that point in time. But there are obviously more NBA matchups that are coming down. So just to reiterate, who do you think is going to win this series, the Jazz-Nuggets series?
I have the Nuggets moving on. Like I said, I think they're the strongest team in the West. I think that the Jazz are a great team. This is a great series. This is probably the most fun series to watch out of every single one of them. But I think the Nuggets are the better team. I think they have a lot more depth to their roster, and I think that's going to really play a huge advantage for them.
So I actually think that the Jazz are going to win this.
Interesting.
Even though they're down right now, I think that the fact that they have such a scoring ability with Donovan Mitchell, I think Rudy Gobert is going to hit more of his stride. I think, again, you said it yourself. If he was able to do more, I think the Nuggets would have easily been able to handle this game. The Jazz would have easily been able to handle this game. It's a very close series. It's really just a toss-up to me. But I do like the Jazz, even though they are down 0-1 in a best-of-5. I think that they can really come back. And again, being down 0-1 isn't the same as it has been for every other year because there is no home court. There is no home crowd. You don't have to worry about not being able to hear your teammates. It's a very different atmosphere. So being down 0-1 isn't as detrimental as it would have been in any other year.
Yeah, that's definitely something to remember. And I could see this series going all 5 games.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is probably the toughest series, the most intriguing series that the NBA has throughout all 8 matchups.
Without a doubt.
So, all right, so we're going to move on. Make sure to tune into the NBA playoffs. We're going to try to do as much live tweeting as we can throughout the week. We're gonna see what we see from these games, and we'll go from there. But another thing that happened recently, NFL camps have finally opened up. We're officially into the NFL season. The NFL training camps have opened, and we've had some injuries, we've had some news, we've had some possible signings that are going to be taking place, so we're going to break some of that down very quickly for you. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they have lost 2 players so far. Aaron Lynch, Rodney Gunter, both retired just 2 days apart.
Yeah, this is a huge blow to them, especially with the situation surrounding Yannick Ngakoue. Who knows what's going on with him right now? There's some speculation that he might be going to the Jets for a couple of draft picks, or he might be going somewhere else. The tension. I know the GM and him have been talking, but the situation around him, he still wants out of Jacksonville, and it's probably going to have to happen at some point this season before the trade deadline. And same thing with Leonard Fournette. So they have 2 of their biggest stars that they're going to have to move before the trade deadline. Otherwise, they're going to lose by the end of the season. So on top of that, like you just said, Rodney Gunter, a great piece for them, who's going to fill in after Marcel Darius. just left in free agency. They decided not to re-sign him.
Well, he's still a free agent.
He is still a free agent, so they might have to look at him because he does know the system. As long as he's in football condition and can pass a physical, he'd probably be a great piece for them on such short notice. But on top of that, you lose Aaron Lynch, who's opposite Yannick Ngakoue on the line. So now you got to fill two huge holes on the defensive line. And we're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are arguably the worst team in the league, just based on roster. And you've got all this young talent that you have to try to build around in the next couple of years to try to become something. We don't know what Gardner Minshew really has to offer, but we're going to see it this year. He's got some weapons on that offense. That offensive line is pretty solid for the most part, so they have some pieces to work off of. Luckily, they do have Jared Allen still, so I think Jared Allen, the defensive end, who should have probably been Defensive Rookie of the Year over Nick Bosa. If you look at the stats, he was better.
Why are you hating on Nick Bosa?
I'm not hating on Nick Bosa. I'm just stating facts. I think Jared Allen is going to play a huge role. So if they could get Marcel Darius back in there, they do run a 4-3 defense. So they're going to have to look at getting another defensive tackle if they alongside Marcel if they want to bring him in, or work on some of their young talent that they have at defensive tackle. I think they do have a couple defensive tackles that they've drafted in recent years that could step in and fill that role, but we're gonna have to see. Like I said before, the hopes for this team is that they're gonna have an early draft pick and they'll be able to have a good rebuild over the next couple of years with the young talent coming into the league.
Yeah, I think they're by far the worst team in the league. I think that this kind of solidifies it too. They lose two other major pieces. They have issues with their top-tier outside linebacker / defensive end. Their stud running back doesn't want to be there anymore. Both of them want out. The whole team, the whole franchise is just going under right now, and I think they need to cut their losses, trade, get as many picks as humanly possible, and start over. We're talking about a team that just 3 years ago was one play away from heading to a Super Bowl, and at this point in time, it's just not in the. It doesn't look like they're going to be there for quite a while.
Yeah, I think even though I say that, and you also say that they're the worst team in the league, they have such amazing upside to them. They have such young studs on their team. DJ Chark, Gardner Minshew, if he can form into anything. They just got Tyler Eifert, so a young veteran tight end. But on the other side, they just drafted C.J. Henderson for their cornerback position. They still have some decent linebackers. So I think that, and Jared Allen, as I mentioned already.
Miles Jack.
Yeah, Miles Jack. These are all guys who are great pieces to build around. And I think if they are able to get draft picks for Ngakoue and Fournette, they could easily rebuild this team in the next 3 years.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars have potential for sure, but it all revolves around Shawn Khan pulling the trigger on Yannick Ngakoue and Leonard Fournette instead of keeping them as prisoners in Jacksonville, allowing them to move on and finding the right fit and the right deal for your team. And I think there's going to be much more of a need and much more of a bidding war, if you will, as camps go on. And even in the first couple weeks of the season, we're going to see a lot more injuries that are happening. A lot more things that teams realize that they could possibly compete, but they need, a stud running back, or they need, that one guy who can get separation and get to the quarterback. And there's a whole litany of things that are going to happen between now and the trade deadline. Jacksonville is going to receive many phone calls from teams that are maybe on the bubble or trying to separate themselves within the division.
Absolutely.
With that being said, speaking of injuries, Gerald McCoy, the star defensive tackle who played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for so many years, with the Carolina Panthers last year, signed with the Dallas Cowboys this offseason, ruptured his quad and had immediate surgery He will be out for all of 2020. He signed a 3-year, $18 million deal in the offseason with the Cowboys. This was a huge loss for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Massive loss. He was going to be... They were in a 4-3 defense, so Gerald McCoy being one of the top-tier 4-3 defensive tackles in the league, he was going to do something special for them. Obviously paired with Everson Griffin and DeMarcus Lawrence.
And
Dontari Poe, who came over from Carolina with him.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to be probably one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines in the league. Without Gerald McCoy, there's a massive gap that now needs to be filled. And you brought up Marcel Darius for the Jags. I think Jerry Jones needs to pull the trigger and sign a 1-year deal with Marcel Darius to fill the Gerald McCoy.
Yeah, we're talking about a Dallas Cowboys team that has extreme potential to go far in the NFC. They're going to give a lot of teams a run for their money. They're absolutely stacked on offense, and I think they've added enough pieces on defense to bring them far. But it's really this front seven that's going to be the real stronghold for the defense. They're the ones that are going to really bring them and get them these wins. Because if you look at the secondary, you got HaHa Clinton Dix, who's been mediocre over the last couple of years, and then you just drafted Trayvon Diggs, who is the brother of Stephon Diggs, who coming from Alabama. He's kind of an off-ball guy. Plays more like zone coverage, not the greatest press coverage. And that's
the opposite Chidobe
Awuzie, who also is kind of the same way. So I expect a lot of zone defense from them, which is going to play into the hands of Shawn Lee and Leighton Vander Esch, all these Jalen Smith, all these linebackers who love to play the zone coverage.
And they're fast linebackers up in the middle. Like, they have a really good, really fast pace that they play with.
Yeah. So if they can solidify the front four, that's going to be major for them to continue on the path that looks very bright for them. So I think Marcel Darius. There are probably a couple other defensive tackles that we're glossing over right now, but there is plenty of talent on the free agent market that can fill in this role. And if they want to go with inside talent, I think Dontari Poe still has enough in him to help out this team enough to get them where they were supposed to go anyway.
Yeah, I like Dontari Poe a lot. I do think that Marcel Darius is the best free agent fit at defensive tackle. You also have Damon Harrison. I just don't think he's a good fit. He's more of a 3-4 nose tackle.
Yeah.
I don't think he fits the scheme and what they're trying to do. They're trying to play a very fast pace of defense because they want to get to the quarterback quickly. They want you to throw inside their zone coverage. They don't want you to be able to make a read as far as which zone that they're going to be in, whether it's going to be 4 deep, 3 deep, if it's going to be 2 cloud, whatever the case may be. So at this point in time, Jerry Jones needs to truly sit down with Mike McCarthy, and they need to figure out what the next steps are going to be. But they have a potential to not only win the division, but possibly compete for a title this year if they can get that front seven together. You talk about a 3-headed monster just at the wide receiver position. Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. Then you have, obviously, one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL in Ezekiel Elliott. You have a I'll say top 10 offensive line, but I think possibly top 5.
I think you can say top 3.
Yeah, I mean, they are with the loss of Travis Frederick is going to be tough.
But I think if you look at the Cowboys' track record of drafting offensive linemen, they're going to be perfectly fine. They're probably the best team at drafting offensive linemen.
And they got your boy Tyler Biadasz.
They got Tyler Biadasz. They have another center that they've had for a couple of years who's Joe Looney. You're right. So Joe Looney has been sitting behind Travis Frederick. Actually started the year Travis Frederick had to take off due to injury.
With the Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Yeah, so Joe Looney, who's probably going to be the day one starter just because of how the NFL is working this year. There's not a lot of time for Tyler Biadasz to get ready. He'll probably be taking over in a couple of years or so. So I think Joe Looney's going to be able to stay in there fine. He already has chemistry with the other guards and tackles on the line, and also with Dak Prescott. So they know how to work together. They know what each other likes. So I think it's going to be pretty seamless for the offensive line.
And you also have Dak Prescott, right? You have a quarterback who has supreme talent, supreme potential. He's in a quote-unquote contract year. He's got a major chip on his shoulder that Jerry Jones isn't giving him what he wants. He needs to go out and prove to the world that he is worth everything that he's asking for. I think you have a major recipe for success out in Dallas. And, I'm not necessarily the biggest Cowboys fan out in the world, but I do like the Cowboys, and I think that they have the makeup to really create some noise out in the NFC. It'll obviously be tough with teams like the Saints. You have
the Buccaneers.
You have the Cardinals. You have
49ers.
Right. I mean, Seahawks. There are some really strong teams in the NFC this year.
It's not only I think it's just the entire NFL. The NFL in general has become a lot more level. I think a lot of teams have come a long way.
It's level at a high level.
At a high level, yeah. There's still just a lot of talent, and it's in huge part to this rookie class. I think this rookie class has added a lot of depth to a lot of teams, and I think this rookie class is going to lay the groundwork for the future of the NFL.
For sure. I think there's a lot to be happy about as a fan of the NFL. If you're not just a fan of the team, but you like the NFL as a whole, a lot of great football going to be being played. Obviously, I think that also shows that one minor inconvenience, one minor misstep could be detrimental for any team in their path for a Super Bowl. Obviously, every team is trying to compete for a Super Bowl, but the loss of Gerald McCoy could end up hindering the Dallas Cowboys so much just because of how strong the rest of the NFL really is.
Yeah, and I think if you look at just their divisional matchup against the Eagles, it's a tough call right now who the better team is in the division. Obviously, you are a homer when it comes to the Cowboys. But as more of a neutral party, I think that it's way too close to call, and anything can happen. And the slightest thing, such as Gerald McCoy going down, could be the difference maker.
For sure. That wasn't the only news in the NFC East, though.
No.
Alex Smith has returned to football today. As we are speaking, as we are filming this podcast, he is currently in a fully padded practice out in Washington with the Washington football team. I want to just take a minute to say how much I not only respect Alex Smith, but how much his journey has meant to so many people, what he's been able to accomplish, everything he's come through. I'm sure, it's not for the faint of heart, but if you haven't by now, go check out the E60 where they detail everything that he's gone through. His entire rehab that he had to go through, all the ups and downs, the mental strenuous capacity that he had, it was just insane.
Yeah.
He has been through hell and back, and he's back on a football field, which we never thought would be possible, especially with the news that was coming out of Washington right after the injury.
Yeah, this was something that probably one of the most devastating injuries ever suffered in the NFL, probably behind Ryan Shazier. This is
Joe Theismann.
Yeah, even Joe Theismann said that Alex Smith's injury was worse than his. I think Alex Smith. I don't know if there's many players in the NFL that have the mental fortitude he does, because the journey he took back, he's the last 9-10 months of rehab all over the country. I mean, he's been in and out of hospitals. I think he's had 17 surgeries. Just what he has gone through. I mean, he was rehabbing for like 9 months with in Texas with people who suffered injuries in combat, in war.
Yeah. So
he was allowed to go down there and rehab with them, with the best people in the world, and that's truly helped him along. And it's not like his arm was affected in any way. So I think he is going to be able to give Dwayne Haskins a run for his money, at least make Dwayne Haskins a better quarterback in the long run, because he's going to have to perform at an extremely high level. Alex Smith has taken the 49ers extremely far. He's taken the Chiefs into the playoffs a couple times. And then, he suffered that injury his first year with the Redskins, now the Washington football team. I think that he can now improve Dwayne Haskins and make him a true star in the NFL. And if Dwayne Haskins isn't up for the job, I think Alex Smith could put really solidify the fairy tale ending, the comeback story that we've all been looking forward to, and become the starter again for the Washington football team.
Don't forget, this is the same Alex Smith who beat out Colin Kaepernick for a job many years ago out in San Francisco.
He beat him out, but then taught Colin Kaepernick how to be a great quarterback, and then went to the Super Bowl. He taught Patrick Mahomes how to be a great quarterback, who just won a Super Bowl, was MVP in the league. And, now he's with the Washington football team, who now has Dwayne Haskins, who there's a lot of question marks around him, whether he's NFL ready or not. And I think that Alex Smith, now that he's going to be around him in the quarterback room day in and day out on the football fields in between plays, that's going to help Dwayne Haskins progress so much, and alongside Ron Rivera running that team.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is just an overall inspirational return for Alex Smith, for anybody who suffers a like injury or the same injury. They can look back, and Alex Smith has single-handedly paved the way for how an athlete can return from some of the most gruesome possible injuries. We have one more topic on the docket, and that would be our good old friend Dez Bryant is working out for the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are looking at adding the former Pro Bowl receiver. He hasn't played in the league since 2017, I believe. He was about to play for the Saints last year before he ruptured his Achilles. Nick, do you think that Dez Bryant is the missing piece for the Ravens offense?
No, I don't think Dez Bryant is that piece. He's been highly criticized in the past for his limited route tree when it comes to being a wide receiver.
It's a big reason why he didn't get a job in New England.
Yeah, or other places too. And I know the Ravens aren't the only team that are looking at him, but that's his first stop. And I'm sure if he still has it, the Ravens are going to want to add him. And if you look at this team, they've added a lot of talent over the last 2 years at the wide receiver core. With you added Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown. You got Willie Snead a few years ago. You just drafted Devin Duvernay, and you've got a great tight end. So if you add him to the piece, now you're 4 deep at wide receiver. I think that it would help, but I don't think that the Ravens have enough right now to go and beat out a team like Kansas City, or go face an NFC team like we mentioned, the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, the Niners, the Seahawks, like all these teams, the Saints. There's so many endless teams. I think that Lamar Jackson still has some improving to do as a passer. We did see a good jump from year 1 to year 2, but I don't know if he's going to be able to take that big of a jump again from year 2 to year 3 as a passer. We all know he's the legs, and don't forget his right side, the right side of the offensive line is completely brand new to him.
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up, is the fact that they shouldn't even be looking at Dez Bryant, and that's no disrespect to Dez Bryant himself, but Marshall Yanda gone, the right tackle for the Ravens opted out, Andre Smith.
Mm-hmm.
They really need to fix that offensive line, and I'm going to tell you right now, they will not have the same success if they're going to utilize the players that they have in-house already. They're going to have to utilize their limited cap and go out and get some of those guys that are out in the free agent market.
Yeah, DJ Fluker is the guy who's taking over from Marshall Yanda, and I don't think you could find a bigger, like two guys who were so far apart as far as talent goes. DJ Fluker, who was a Seahawk last year, was part of the abysmal team that made Russell Wilson run around for his life all game.
He was also a tackle during his time in I guess San Diego.
Yeah, so this is a guy who was mediocre to begin with and has just gone downhill his entire career. This is probably the last guy I would expect to take over for Marshall Yanda. Probably the worst guy I could ever think of for the job. And it's going to make Lamar Jackson have to think a lot faster on his feet. He's going to have to perform better under pressure. And he better be nimble enough. I know he is, but he better stay as nimble as he is to continue to give success to the Baltimore Ravens.
Would you say it was a fluke?
It was a poor choice signing DJ Fluker. I'll say that.
Yeah, the Ravens have a lot more question marks. I don't think Des Bryant should be top of the priority list for them, so I understand what they're trying to do. I do hope that Des Bryant gets a shot in the NFL. Maybe he goes back to the Dallas Cowboys, but the fact remains that there is there's still some pieces for each of these teams that really needs to they need to focus on before Des Bryant gets another job again.
Yeah, Des Bryant, he's not going to bring him too far, but we'll see what happens in his workout and if he gets signed to a team. It's a wait and see game at this point, but I don't think Des Bryant is the missing piece. No,
not at all. All right, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of Trash Talk. I appreciate everybody coming in and listening. Make sure to tune in next week where we're going to have a new studio for you guys to take a look at and all the different graphical changes that we have. Make sure to check us out on Twitter where you're going to see all of the updates throughout the week in between shows. We keep everybody updated. We talk with our audience. We make sure that we are completely discussing these topics in full length and debating with our audience for sure. At that point in time, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not watching it on YouTube, check it out. Make sure that you are subscribe to our channel. You're going to be notified. Hit the bell. Make sure you're notified every time a new video goes up. We're going to start posting smaller videos with different highlights from each episode. That way you're going to be able to just listen to different topics without having to listen to the entire podcast. So make sure to look out for that. We'll start that in the next few weeks as well. For now, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. Let's go! Yeah.